Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Csukor. First, before I proceed, I want to thank the National Restaurant Association for not only having one of the world's most remarkable trade shows wrapped around the food and the hospitality industry. Hand for them. But also Johnson & Wales for sponsoring all of us being here before you today. We're going to do a brief introduction of ourselves so you know why we're here, who we are, and get into some really compelling thoughts around consumers' insights as they regard authenticity and ethnic cuisines. Now, if you're feeling like you're going to walk out with a hardcore, concrete definition of what authentic means, you're in the wrong classroom. I just did a conference with my colleague and senior product development chef, Sira Doot. Raise your hand. She's also with my firm. We did this in San Antonio around clean label. There's another sticky wicket, right? Authenticity, like clean label, is very personal to that which is interpreting, to you, to the people around you. So I want you to feel comfortable with the discomfort you're going to have around the different ideas that my colleagues and friends and I have. And at the end, we want you to reflect on that and feel free to talk to us as well. We want you to be comfortable. Oh, we've started again. You're going to have to bear with us. We're having some little things happening here technologically. But I want you to be comfortable, want you to be relaxed, want you to take all this information in. And like I said, let's talk a little bit at the end. If we've narrowed our time down such that you don't feel comfortable with, they're going to scoot us out of the room, we'll be outside in front of our class to have a broader discussion with you about topic at hand. So, as introduced, I'm John Csukor. I've been doing this crazy food thing for about 30 years now. 50 years old next year, the son of a Chilean immigrant and a Hungarian dad. My mom and dad met at the World Cup in '62 in South America. So I'm representing the Latin side of things today. Aside from owning an agency, a food-born agency, my background is fine dining. My background is marketing and product development. And I'm also soon to be, again, a student of Johnson & Wales University. With that, I'm going to turn it over briefly to Chef Robert Danhi to introduce himself, and then as well, so will Martin Murch will administer what you need to know about him at the same time. Robert?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, my name is Robert Danhi. I'm a chef that's based between Los Angeles and Malaysia, which is kind of an odd combination. But my wife is Malaysian, so I've spent the last 25 years really focusing on researching the authentic traditional cultures, kind of curating those cultures for folks like yourself. And as a chef in the restaurant industry, as an educator for nearly a decade, and now in product development for the past 13 years or so, I have a company called Chef Danhi & Company, not that creative, that does consulting for the food industry, manufacturers, restaurant chains, and then here at the NRA I'm launching a new product line called Global Flavor Shakers, which is a line of seasonings with sriracha flakes and cool stuff like that. But my specialty is Southeast Asia. It's where I spend nearly half the year, and as my real second home. Enough.
Thanks, Robert.
Of course.
Martin.
So I came up through the culinary arena, graduate of Johnson & Wales, and was privileged enough to serve on the Junior American Culinary Olympic team, as well as I was the executive banquet chef at the White House, had the honor of serving 3 different presidents. In as such, transition, started a little venture capital company, own a multitude of different hotels, actually Clean Landfill is one of those investments, as well as a couple of restaurant groups. The ones that I'm representing today is Good Eats Restaurant Groups, located right here in Chicago. Currently we have Sono Wood-Fired. Sono Wood-Fired is that true, authentic Tuscany and Florence styled Italian cuisine, so I'm here to represent the authentic Italian side. And then we also have Burger Bar here, which is true craft, handcrafted gourmet burgers and craft beers. So that's where my journey has led to us.
You can see why I'm happy to be here. World-class gentlemen to stand beside and talk to you today about who we all report to, our consumer. So I told you my firm is a marketing firm. We spend a lot of time talking to consumers and listening to what they have to say. Importantly, because again, unless you happen to be here thinking this was the National Rifle Association show, we're all here to serve our consumers. So we thought it'd be really compelling for you to hear from us on what consumers are driving us to think about. So what we did was it is funny, I know, the NRA rifles, we had a whole discussion about that this morning. It's kind of cool. Anyway, we picked their brain on what their notions are about authentic cuisine, ethnic authentic cuisine, what it means to them, what some of their buttons are that get pushed. I think you're going to see some surprising responses. So how this will go, we're going to show you the question that we went to them with. We're going to show you some of their responses, and then we're going to dig into it with our own opinions on what that means. But first and foremost, I think, before we even get into this, let's talk briefly about authentic. So now focus on us because we can't see that. So, authentic. Martin just said something, burger bar. You know, we're talking Latin, Asian, and Mediterranean right now. So, Martin, what's up with burger bar? Authentic what?
Authentic, in our capacity, what we've tried to do, as my partner and I, is we've tried to stay true to the global flavors and the global travels that we have. So we've infused into something that's considered, American in itself would be an authentic cuisine. It's much more vast, right? It has much greater boundaries because there's such influence on it. But we've taken that and we've influenced the burger bar specifically with seasonings, with ingredients from South America, from Brazil, from France, from Italy, to create an authentic environment around the burger bar or the burger itself, which would be Americana. Mm-hmm. So that's how we've created Burger Bar to be new and inviting and really showcase a multitude of what we can do with the authenticity of bringing in ingredients and so forth from different parts of the world, or infusing them in different parts of the world into American product.
So American authenticity, that was an important point we wanted to bring up, was we don't want to mix the boundaries here and confuse in one's mind that we're trying to impose upon you the notion that authentic cuisine only comes from outside of our borders. Okay? I mean, clearly there's a lot to be said about what is truly authentic in America, correct? So how many chefs in the audience who've been trained as a chef? Fantastic. GMs, food management corporations, nutritionists. Yeah, if I missed you, tell me about it later. But my point in this is just we want to hit you where it makes sense. So give us a quick hands up and I'll redirect if need be. But I think you're going to find this really interesting. We're really going to take that path of ethnic authenticity today. So again, when we talk about it, please don't think that we're mixing words and saying that if it's not American, it's not authentic. That's a point that we wanted to make really clear. So let's look at what some consumers responded. They said that which is made with the ingredients and methods used by the ethnicity. Okay? Anything that does not have roots in the USA. That was interesting and kind of quite contrary to what we just said, right? Again, this went out to 200 consumers with no ethnographic point. We cast a net into the U.S. and got everything coast to coast back. So something that's not Americanized to fit the American palate. Very similar to what would be served in the country of ethnic origin, something which is Indian, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Mexican, Italian, or Greek. My Hungarian dad is really disappointed in heaven right now.
Didn't make the cut, Jeff. Didn't make the cut.
Food made by a person from that culture with authentic ingredients. So I just spent a week with my mom. She's doing some recoup. And we were cooking some authentic... Okay, no. We weren't cooking. She was incapacitated. I was cooking, and she was telling me how much more cumin I had to put in the dish. But we made some really, what I consider authentic recipes. You know, these are things she came from Chile with. These are the recipes of her mother and her grandmother. To me, that's truly authentic Latin cuisine of Chilean origin. So, that said, we want to have this discussion about ethnic versus authentic and how the two shall intertwine. Why don't we start with you, Robert?
Sure. Well, I mean, ethnic. When we say ethnic, it seems like everyone's always looking afar, right? But America isn't ethnicity. Right? So, I mean, that's also included. Talking to the cultures of Asia, which is where I spend a majority of my time, I remember when I was teaching at the other school, I'm the token CIA graduate here, and students would come up to me, or fellow faculty, and they'd say, well, what's Thai food like, Robert? And I'd go, well, you have a month? Right? I mean, how do you describe cuisine that they're farming rice 4,000 years ago and there's just so much to it. But what happens, in order to communicate, we generalize. But when we generalize, we lose a lot of those nuances. And what most people will say is this flavor profile, right? Oh, what's Thai food? Coconut milk, kaffir lime, lemongrass, chili. It's like, well, that's Malaysian. That's part of Vietnamese in some parts. So I had to come up with kind of this definition of what authentic, et cetera. And to me, just the continuum, my perspective, of course, is traditional is the food is the way that they were. Authentic is how it is now. That's my opinion. And to me, something is authentic once it's been absorbed into every socioeconomic level within that culture itself. For instance, mayonnaise is an example I usually bring up. In Japan, is mayonnaise traditional Japanese food? How many would say yes? Right? Is it part of contemporary, real Japanese food today?
Absolutely.
Of course it is. It's authentic, but it's not traditional. Then the third part, which is where I play a lot of my role with chain restaurants and groups like that, is looking at genuine. When you taste it, it tastes like that culture. It may be the ingredient combination, it may be the technique, or it may be the presentation. But if you look at all those things coming together in something that's authentic, it's the geography, it's the history, it's the ethnic diversity, it's the culinary etiquette. It's all these things come together into something that's truly authentic. It's not one part. It's a culmination of all these things together. And so, to me, that's authentic, where it feels right. And, yeah.
I mean, on the Thai note, too, just one thing I noticed recently was how it's broadening a little bit, too. So the highway of Thai cuisine in the States is broadening.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm starting to now see, like, I was in Minneapolis, went to a Thai place, and I'm like, what's wrong with this lob gai? It's not right, in my immature culinary
minced
mentality.
Chicken, salad, roasted rice powder.
It happened to be a northern version. I'm used to eating southern. So the spices were completely different. Paradigm shifted, and I had to learn, right? I was schooled. But that's what I love about the United States, is that we're sort of a blank palette for all of these flavors and cuisines to come in. The Mediterranean opinion.
Well, our approach, or the approach that we've taken, is really, we try to study not only the culture, but really what is indigenous specifically to the regions that we're trying to represent, and then incorporate those indigenous ingredients, preparation, and styles into the cuisine that we actually showcase through one of the brands that is appropriate to that. Mm-hmm. So from an authentic capacity, our view has been really focused on, let's understand what is capable within that region. And then it's interesting because as more cultures, and that's really what we're talking about when we're sharing about a cuisine, is really staying true to the culture of it all, because it varies. But it's the authentic. The authentic is expanding because as more touch it, that culture grows through different avenues of whether it's a chef that studies Brazilian cuisine and touches something in the Thai arena and grows it, because the majority of the preparation of the culture is still there, but it expands. So it's also a evolution of time that we will continue to impose upon.
Completely. I mean, look, the food that I started eating 25 years ago in different parts of Asia, I just spent half of last year in Vietnam, and the food that I tasted there 15 years ago, not completely different. It has evolved, and it all has. So it's constantly changing, and what you said is as it gets absorbed in and new people come in, that all food is fusion. I mean, really. Right? And as a curator of their cultures, to me, it's more about figuring out what's important and highlighting it as opposed to creating it. I'm not creating the food, I'm curating it.
Sure. And it's so much excitement, because that's where all of us as professionals in this industry continue to move things forward collectively, even though we don't understand that we're all tied together on driving what's coming next.
I'm going to make one last point on authenticity, only because it was sort of a dare about a year ago that I do this, and we went through with it. It's finally been trademarked. The phrase latitudinal cuisine is a trademarked term of core food innovation. And it is the meaningful connection of two cuisines somewhere in the world that falls on a similar latitude. They're connected through that to similar growing practices, similar indigenous ingredients, similar cooking styles. Like a perfect example is a concept we worked on called Taza Kitchens in Richmond, which is fantastic. And they connected the Baja region of Mexico with the Campania region of Italy. A lot of hearth cooking, a lot of great fresh seafood, a lot of meaningful agriculture that makes its way into the cuisines, and very identifiably a meaningful connection. So two diametrically opposed from a geographic perspective, connected through like ingredients, is that authentic or not?
Well, I mean, really, think about it. How many people would agree with this? Let's say Mexico. Let's take one place down there. Mexico and let's say even Vietnam. If you looked at their pantries, I would argue that the ingredients, I would say there's a 50% crossover with core ingredients, not with all the different varieties. I see a lot of heads nodding. You know, there's a lot. It's how it's used, how it's presented, right? And remember, this is a really important fact. 500 and I think now 10 years ago, there were no chilies of any sort, of any variety, capsicum, in any part of Asia. Zero. That's a fact. What was Thai food like then? What was Korean food like? Those things that visually you see, oh, that's, no. 500 years is nothing in their history, in their cuisine. So foods are always changing. We gave them the chilies, but they gave us citrus. There was zero citrus in any part of the Americas. Not an orange, not a grapefruit, not a lemon, not a lime. So what was Mexican food without limes? So it's all evolving.
Or a majority of almost any cuisine.
Yeah.
Right? Citrus-based flavor.
Mind-blowing, huh? Like only 500 years ago, there was no chilies? Like, really?
Just out of curiosity, is there anybody that would like to share your thoughts and ideas on authentic or ethnic at this point in time?
One or two. It's got to be burning a hole in your head right now.
Yeah,
because we're going to run out of time, but that's a great point. Anybody just like you want to come up and punch me, you're so anxious to talk about what you think authenticity is. I got backers here, so they'll protect me, but I'm just saying. No? We'll do it at the end, too. That's cool.
It's coming back a few.
It'll count. There we go.
Okay.
So this was interesting. Would you sacrifice the experience for truly authentic flavors at an ethnic? I mean, okay, the notion here is you're going to give up the white tablecloth, that you're going to give up I love these guys, so I use them all the time, the Hillstone level of service with the service teams and the crisp 3 white shirts in the locker, so if you get one speck, you go change. You're going to give that up for really authentic pho or some remarkable empanadas or a little flatbread? That's the question. Look at how many yeses and look at how many nos. I think, Robert, you had a comment here about how this number might have been different a little while ago.
Oh yeah, completely, right? And also, what's funny is, and a lot is just in how it's phrased, is would you sacrifice? It's like they're paying nowadays. It's like people won't pay, or excuse me, often some people won't pay for that lower end, because if you do Thai food or Vietnamese food, and you're charging like fine dining prices, there's not many places that get along with it. For some reason, they've almost been commoditized. It's sad, right? Like, oh, that's Chinese. There's actually, yeah. But this has changed drastically over the years.
Well, and I think from a Latin perspective, we see the same thing. Some of the world's favorites of Latin flavors are country food, right? It's not coming from big cities. My mom was born in Valdivia, the very southern tip of Chile, the Región de los Lagos, the lakes region. So little tiny towns with no airports at all, you know, and they're little port towns. So things with seafood in them and so forth. We're, like you said, getting some barramundi or some bass or, you know, sierra fish. Theirs is not a swordfish. I'll explain later. But these beautiful fish are like pennies a pound because it's their commodity. But it's country food, and I think those different levels are sort of coming up now. So some fine dining or Spanish and Peruvian cuisine, right, because they're marketing themselves well. But you have these different levels of cuisine. It's hard to offer an empanada, which looks like, you know, a little burnt shoe, and call it fine dining because it's such country cuisine.
It seems like, at least for what I see, I'm, as I said, based in Los Angeles, you look in that West Coast often, like you look at people like, Andy Rick or Christian Maroon or people that are doing like real Thai food. And it tastes like, that's it. And no apologies, right? The pla ra, the fermented fish, it's like, oof. But this is the real thing, and they are charging more finally. I think the audience, the consumer, is looking for that and is willing to pay for that real food. Because frankly, with all due respect, the fine dining cuisine is often those foods take more labor or as much labor, and the ingredients are hard to find. So why shouldn't you pay more for this real lob from Lana, from the Chiang Mai region? That's a special thing. Why not pay full price? Oh, it's Thai food. Like, yeah. So it seems like, this is an opinion, not a fact, that people are willing to pay a little bit more for those real, genuine flavors, authentic, and even traditional foods made right here. Even with the coriander from this country, it tastes a little different. Of course it does. But you can still get pretty damn close.
I mean, as a tool, leaving here with a tool that you can utilize, I think some of the things that are coming up are, do your homework, understand what building the many layers and levels of flavor that go into Southeast Asian cuisine is going to pay off by the authenticity you can put across the table versus the pre-made one-step Thai liquid marinade. It's not that it's going to be bad, but I think that's where there's a big gap in the valley between authentic and non, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
What about, you had a lot to say about this, Martin, so what are your thoughts on the service model and how service is influencing or being influenced by the perception of ethnicity and authenticity?
So there's two pieces I think that we're going to pull from. Is number one, it's not just the ingredients, right, that we're pulling from, but it's also the preparation.
Oh, yeah.
The timing and the expertise of the preparation that creates the authenticity of the actual delivered product. That along with the service. The comfort of us to be able to go into the Hillstone portfolio, we know it's Americanized, it's very comfortable, it's similar to many other establishments that we can walk to at any point in time. But if we look at how to serve the food and the engagement of the guest in serving the food and creating that environment, most cuisine is what is peasant food. It's just a matter of how do we take it to the next level, and whether it's the Mediterranean cuisine, which has been able to achieve that over a much longer period of time because it's been around longer, or some of the new cuisines that we're actually just touching the tip of learning about, and that gap for the guest in the service profile to what is the service that creates the authenticity of the cuisine that's been delivered, I think is monstrous. And I think that we are seeing more and more of that continue to grow, and the guests are trying to really figure out what is that and experience more of it so they can share.
Right. You bring up a good point about how the, oh goodness, just lost my train of thought, about the authenticity. Damn it, I missed it. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
There's something that piqued an interest.
I want to keep us moving a little bit in the essence of time. I know you'll come back to it, Robert.
That's fine.
Here's a few more interesting questions. Are you more willing to try new things at an ethnic restaurant?
One thing, sorry,
Yeah,
to follow up on that. So if you think about, you mentioned about most cuisines are peasant cuisine. And once again, I'll stick in Southeast Asia. But if you look at Thailand, there's a royal cuisine, and there has been for over 1,000 years. And so it is one of the cultures that already had this elaborate, ornate cuisine in their traditional foods. Where if you look at, not that Burma hasn't had that, or Cambodia, but if you look at their history over the last couple of years, they've been surviving. And Thailand has been thriving. So they're at different points in their evolution. It should be interesting, because when a cuisine evolves back in antiquity, it develops a much more complex, more diverse offering, as opposed to, let's say, America, that developed in an industrial society. Right? So developed a long time ago, there's going to be more to it, and some is survival, and some places have royal, and then some that are evolved in an industrial society. It's very different. Very different.
Absolutely.
We combined these two because they're very relative one to the next. It has to do with the consumer's adventurous nature when they go to ethnic cuisines. Are they going to be more willing? I mean, you see a very strong number there. I think why I wanted to combine them was how much they responded to these questions nearly identically. And so I think there's a little bit of tell here. You know, the first one has to do with trust. The second one has to do with behavior. And this is a relationship. What I learned from this was you have a direct relationship, however brief or long, you might think, with the customer that walks into your restaurant. There's a relationship there. I love that social media is really embracing that and has the notion that, hey, you're coming back, and some great ones are teaching servers to don't look at a person as the $100 ticket they're going to drop tonight. Look at them as they're worth somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to you over the next year. That's how you need to look at a consumer. So that's what I took from this. And the only thing I can pull from this, it's probably not so much my Latin side, but more the restaurateur side when we're consulting and working and building restaurants, has to do with the last part, and it's toning it down. My thumbnail story of this has to do with piri piri sauce. Heard of it? Yes? Okay. Put a piri piri sauce on the menu, and 2 weeks later I go to visit the restaurant, and it's this pink thing. You know, it became 75% mayonnaise with 25% piri. This has nothing to do with the consumer's lack of desire for spice. If you look at another slide somewhere in this show, I guarantee you there's somebody from one of the big hot sauce companies telling you the truth about how much we all love spice. Just don't surprise me with it. Don't exchange my toothpaste with it in the morning, right? So my notion there to staff is be taught. Teach your staff and know that we're in the position of passing on education, not educating, but passing on education to our consumers. Thank goodness for the Food Network, right? That they're helping us with that. They're getting people more familiar with flavors and cuisines. But we have to kind of take that ball and run with it. I don't remember everything the first time my professor told me. I had to think that through and study it and hear it again and again. So if somebody orders the thing with piri in it, say, hey, you know what? That's my favorite dish too. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 9. That's why I like it. It's spicy. If you don't prefer spice, let me bring you some of our great aioli that we make as well, and you can tone it down. We owe people that, right? Instead of changing the menu and you bastardize what could have been authentic and real just to apologize for yourself. Why do that? I think we need to be unapologetic and put spice out there. Put some moxie on the table and just tell people what you're doing so you're not surprising them with it.
Just out of respect for the cultures. And, you know, first, like you said, learn about it. To me, out of respect, if you really understand it, well, there's nothing, he's going to hurt me for this, but if you take a piri piri sauce, a real one, and you mix it with mayonnaise, if it tastes good, that can taste good, but don't call it that. Like, to me, when my first book was Southeast Asian Flavors, like authentic, this is the way, really complex. But then I was asked to do something called easy Thai cooking. I'm like, well, I'm not writing that. I don't want my name easy Thai. That's just ridiculous. That's insulting. But then I started thinking about food that Thais cooked for me that wasn't the classic Thai dishes, the genuine flavors of that region. And so when I did a version of Tom Yum soup, I put cellophane noodles and basil because it tastes good and it made sense, but I didn't call it Tom Yum. Called it hot and sour. So I think out of respect, don't call it what it's not. Call it some inspired by or style of. And I know that's semantics, but life is filled with semantics, and out of respect for people, I think we owe it to those cultures that have developed them.
Any thoughts on this one, Mark?
Yeah, and carrying the torch, this is also where we got into a little bit more about the guest service piece. This is a phenomenal opportunity if we're going to stay true to the culture, if we're going to stay true to the ethnic and the authentic cuisine that we want to be associated with or we want to showcase for our guests. It's about engagement of the guests and creating the experience while they're there with your team and yourself to really share. Your guest is constantly inquisitive about the menu and the items in every capacity, and the more that we can engage them, especially if there's certain items that are just so authentic that they make the dish, and sharing what that is and how it's going to be enjoyed or not enjoyed, and the different ways they can also apply it through the taste that they're looking for that they enjoy most. They can try it X, Y, and Z. We have a Diablo sauce. And our Diablo sauce, we start out in the morning, and those habanero peppers are right on the grill, charred, sweated down, and everything else. And we tell people when they want that with their wings or they order the Diablo wings, every single individual in the establishment knows that we are having an engagement with the guests about what that Diablo sauce truly is and how spicy it can be. We even have some people, we offer them, can you give us another 20 minutes if you want a little hotter? We have some other things that we can add into that to kick it up, if that's your preference. And that's the key, is really sharing the authentic flavors with the preference of your guests, and then creating that relationship so that it is truly that $2 to $5 or $6 or $10,000 investment.
I can't stress it enough. So again, part of our personalities, I know we consult, we work on different concepts. We continue to minister and preach this, and I'm wholeheartedly asking you to, if you're going to work on a concept, don't tone it down. Go after what is authentic and communicate. Like every good relationship. I began this by saying we're talking about a relationship. I think the best that we can do any relationship is good communication. So
I think another good point is,
yep.
and you had said something, you had went back to that establishment, and actually they had said that all of their guests, right? All of their guests were saying that this is just too hot, and John engaged appropriately and say, okay, let's look at the guest comments and stuff, and there was actually 4. So, how many people really are not happy or excited about trying that new cuisine or that new item or that potentially very spicy or flavorful product that's authentic to that specific cuisine you're offering?
Yeah, so 3 or 4 sendbacks to a chef is enough to get him thinking his hackles are up and he needs to make a change, right? On a busy night, he or she is now frustrated, but they need to not, again, apologize for what they've done. I think they need to embrace training a little better with their staff and communicate to their consumer. Yeah. What type of food are you afraid of? This was kind of funny. Super spicy Indian food and Japanese sushi. Foreign or strange meats. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Strange meats. If anybody has an idea what that
only
is.
Japanese sushi.
Yeah. Animal meat that we don't typically eat in the U.S. Things that look too close to being alive. I thought that was cute. Any food whose preparation results in a raw or grossly undercooked meat. Anything with bugs as a delicacy. Robert, on that last note.
Not a delicacy, it's nutrition. They can be tasty if cooked properly.
Yeah.
And there's this one water bug, it's not a roach, that's in Thailand and Vietnam that's used, and it smells like the most beautiful flower you've ever had. And you infuse that into liquids, and like in the north of Vietnam, the banh cuon, the fresh rice noodle rolls, so you infuse that and you put that sauce on it. In Thailand, they use it more in the north. It's amazing, but they're not good fried though.
Since we've been here, I was born and raised here. I've been gone for 15 years, and now walking around, I'm seeing very different weather here in Chicago. If you're from here, you know what I'm talking about. It's the first time I've ever seen fog rolling through the city like San Francisco. Never seen that before in living here for 30 years. Our world is changing, and you'll get where I'm going with this in a moment. But we also, during clean label conversations, we talk a lot about our diminishing, hold on to your seats, we're going to get through this together, our diminishing chocolate and coffee resources in the world. Yeah. They're diminishing. So are other foodstuffs. So I'm not going to be the first to jump on the bandwagon, but when I see us exploring cricket protein, is that what I've seen lately? A lot of
two major companies.
We have to really think hard about where we're going to feed our world from. So I think it's important to think about it. Begin the discussion and talk about it, and become educated about it, right?
Yeah, and often whether I'm in Asia touring somewhere around or something, oh, that's weird. I'm like, no, it's not weird. It's unfamiliar.
Yeah, good.
It's a big difference, isn't it? Oh, that's nasty. Well, that's perspective. And to some people, that's how they've lived for the past 10 years, and otherwise they would have literally died. So I think it's just unfamiliar sometimes to take stepping back and looking at it from a different perspective, whether it be the species of animal or the different gene or whatever. Yeah.
We're sharing opinions, and mine was just, as I mentioned, I'm not going to be the first one to get on the bandwagon of cricket powder. My unfamiliarity would be the moment that I flossed and there was a little leg gripping to the dental floss.
We knew he'd get that in there.
It's ground up.
He would get that in there.
That's just my perspective, my 2 cents. Martin, what are your thoughts on afraid of food?
Yeah, I think it's tragic just to cut anything out of any culture, because the unique part is different cultures of the world already have been so much more eco-focused on their cuisine because they've been used they've been used to using so much more potential animal products.
Survival.
And or other products that potentially are unfamiliar, and I really enjoy that actually, unfamiliar to other individuals that potentially are just becoming part of it, or other cultures that are just part of being exposed to it. So I've been entertained. We've actually, I think we've all had a tremendous amount of entertainment with this. Being alive thing, I might be part of.
Yeah, fighting your food.
Yeah, I'm
not my
so
thing.
Sure.
But if it was just the, well, no. To me, any smell, it doesn't matter what I think. Next.
Yeah.
And one last notion on this, because if you think about raw or undercooked, let's talk about that for just a moment if we can.
Sure.
I know you both can have opinions on
Yes.
this. So, again, raised by my late father and my mom when she was nursing, being a nurse at RN. My dad would make dinner that night, and this, is roofing shingle a good term for the pork chop? Let's call it roofing shingle. That my dad would put on the plate, it would almost shatter. It was a pork chop that they cooked the daylights out of it. You know, he's of an era, he was raised in communist Hungary, where, yeah, you could get worms from undercooked pork.
Yeah.
You know, coming up on 3 decades ago, that changed with the U.S. mandate of now having to pasteurize slop. That's all it took. We took the junk out of their food, and all of a sudden they're fine. So if you don't know that, don't be afraid of a medium rare piece of pork, because trichinosis is all but devoid of existence in the United States. Yeah, anything on raw meats?
Yeah, to me, it's once again, it's one of those things that of our hypersensitive, overly careful, ridiculously sanitized society that we're breeding a culture of wimps that don't have bodies that have immune systems anymore. And so there is some concerns about raw meat for people that aren't used to it. Not from just an organoleptic, like I like it or I don't, but from food safety for some people that can. But yeah, I mean, once again, to me, this is just about perspective. If you like it raw, if you like texture, we all taste differently.
Yep.
Probably literally, but we all taste differently. If you don't like it, who am I to say you're not a good person? Well, you got to eat it. I think that machismo BS of like, well, I eat this because it's like, come on, if you don't like it, don't eat it. That's okay. You know, I don't think there's any proud factor because you ate a live eating snake heart. Okay.
I was going to bring that up, Robert.
It's not very good.
Little plug for Robert. He has a television special that's aired all over Asia and parts of Europe. Yeah?
It's in Asia currently.
And what happened with live beating snake hearts, Robert?
Yeah, this show's called Taste of Vietnam. It's 26 episodes, and one of them was I had to eat. They told me I could eat a live beating snake heart, and I said no. Whatever. It's a long story. Point is, I did, not along with the bile infused rice wine and blood infused, but I got past the beginning because I figured I eat steak, so I eat blood. Why not drink it, right? It's just a different, you don't have to chew it that way. Maybe it's faster. But yeah, that's a long story.
The wine infusing helped, though.
The wine definitely helped. Supposedly it made me more of a man, although I didn't think I had a problem with that.
You are a solid man.
So this one is really interesting.
Well, the one thing before we go too far,
go ahead.
simple thought, fact, known, historical. Human beings have been consuming raw product longer than cooked product. Just simply look back when fire was started. Have we gotten away from it? Have we leveraged that in different capacities and forgotten about it? Absolutely. Have other cultures? Not necessarily.
It's amazing. Costco now, I've just seen this explosion, not just at Costco, of poke restaurants. You know, poke is a mixed salad from Hawaii. You go into a Safeway or a market there, and there's 30 varieties in a typical Hawaiian market. I lived there for about a year. But every Friday, Saturday now in Los Angeles, there's poke festivals. And some of it's the raw tuna, kind of the classic, iconic version. But then there's also cooked version. It's not always raw. But it's just amazing to see how poke's like become this restaurant chain phenomenon. I'm seeing them. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
A food truck named Pokemon.
Yeah, there's actually a poke truck. Yeah, Pokemon. That's clever.
I had to. Okay. This was interesting, especially as you look at the group in front of you. Would you consider an ethnic restaurant authentic if you saw an American chef cooking?
Just one sentence. And you can imagine I've crossed this many times. We are who we are because of our experience, not our ethnicity. Simple as that. You're only Thai if you've been grown up in a Thai culture. you know, or what have you. Still be Thai by origin, but I'm half Egyptian and half Russian, but I don't know anything about those cultures or cuisines because I wasn't embraced in them. I haven't studied them. But yeah, but I get it. Oh, trust me, I get it.
Depends where the chef learned to cook. Right? It goes.
You can learn real Thai food in Tacoma, Washington.
It's hand in hand with what you said. It has to do with the experiences.
Yep.
Maybe I wouldn't automatically discount them. I would want to see what their training and experience was.
Fair enough.
And taste their food. Makes sense.
You know, interesting enough, actually, we have a very unique opportunity. A gentleman that actually I went to school with and so forth, we're engaged in this opportunity to do an externship program with a student. And I was having this conversation this morning about, you know, have you traveled? What are some of the cuisines you'd like to study, and are you going to become indigenous into the country to understand them for a specific period of time?
There's no better way.
Yeah.
Now you can learn. You can really. I've cooked with people that are like, wow, aroy, mak, delicious Thai. That's real Thai. And they've never been there. However, for me, I have to be there. For me to learn, I need to spend months. You know, talking with people, going to homes, going to restaurants. Once again, all those different levels of cuisine. To really understand the food culture is be there. Learn some of the language. Just you got to go.
Well,
you got to go.
And I think.
Sono, I mean,
go ahead.
It's Sono wood-fired. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, and we do meet the winemaker and everything else, and these winemakers that are coming over from Italy and Umbria and whatever else, and they're sitting down and we've shared, and we're a little proud of it. We've said, listen, we really want your feedback. We want you to know that we're authentic. I mean, we received 5 Michelin recommenders for Sono. We think we're staying true to the core of what this is. And I am just honored and blessed and so forth, and not one, every single one of them have not only said that we've been able to achieve that, but often they go out and have other visits and so forth, and they're coming back late night to try some of the other stuff. I mean, it's
cool.
It's easy to do, too, if you want to stay committed, because all of the ingredients, they're available.
Pretty
the
much.
Understanding. It's like, use an example, if I believe I'm correctly, or one of you, about that's not authentic curry because this individual from Thailand says it's not authentic.
Oh, that was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was teaching, that's not Thai. Pha, Rung Pha is a good friend now, says that's not Thai red curry. I'm like, just because they're from a culture, what makes them an expert in cuisine? How many Americans really know what cioppino should be and how it's made and what the techniques and the history are? Or a great gumbo. I made gumbo, but I'm no expert in it. It's American food. It's 100% American.
Blending of cuisines,
yes,
is 100% American.
One thing interesting regarding travel, Robert, is to do the reverse, to sort of pay homage to your ethnic roots. And thank goodness for modern travel. We all have that ability, and by all means, save up and do it. My mom hadn't been home in 45 years, and I took a trip with her and brought her home to see her brother after that many years. And after eating Chilean cuisine all of my life, growing up eating country food, eating chimichurri, eating empanadas, and all of the remarkable cuisines of Chile, I finally sort of got to go and see why things taste the way they do. And got to see the ingredients when she would make something and liken it to, if I only had this great culantro that we grew, or this special murta berry that they grew, or whatever that was. She could get it like 99% there, and she's like, this is how we did it, but it's missing this one little thing.
A lot of it, you can have the content, but it's not in context of the culture, right? It's a big difference. You can have it, but it's like, does it relate? And fortunately, with the amount of ingredients that have changed and what you can get kaffir lime leaves year-round now, and they're fresh. And 10 years ago, that wasn't so easy. So yeah, there's a lot of things that have changed, and I think you can bring the consumer there within an operation for me, because being a photographer and doing things like that, through imagery up on the walls, through videos that are presenting, through the textures. A colleague of mine just opened a place called Cho 77, and he came over to Vietnam, and we shipped back a street cart and a bunch of his plateware, and he opened this street food thing. It's not street food, but it's good food, and but he's surrounded by stuff we bought in Vietnam, and so it adds part of that context to it. It's cool. Gives you a good vibe.
Modern travel, where we started this part of it off, and the distribution channels that have developed on a global basis that's available to us today, there's really nothing that's not available to us. There's really nothing. If you want it and you want to stay true to it, you can get it without question.
I know it's not local, but that's
Well,
a whole
but
nother
you know what?
story.
That's,
Let's not
that's
even
a
go
great
there.
point.
It's local.
It is
somewhere.
local
Here.
because it's committed to the local area that the cuisine is indigenous to,
Okay. Ah.
right?
Local
Okay.
somewhere.
So what is, I mean, local is a whole nother probably
let's not-
discussion point, but
Continue, Chef.
Next year's session will be on local. Just kidding. So, would you be willing to pay more for authentic flavors and ingredients at ethnic restaurants?
This is what I jumped on when we were talking about how that has changed.
Can I finish, Robert?
Sorry.
He's not passionate about this one at all.
gonna have to stop.
Look at how many say yes. Depends on the food.
Wow.
Hole-in-the-wall ethnic restaurants are usually fairly priced, and very relative phraseology as well, because it's all in the eyes of the beholder. What's fairly priced when you're talking about a piece of Kobe beef, right?
Right.
Is a $150 plate of that fairly priced? If you know anything about the growing model of that animal, probably is. So it's context, as you said. What are your thoughts on this, Robert?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like, there's so many people that are starting to pay for it. But 10 years ago, do you think this would have been flipped? I think some people, and I think there'd be a smaller group that would agree with this compared to what it is now. It's the whole world has changed in a good way, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think there's a direct correlation back to, and Chef Searath had a lot to say about this too, and you mentioned it, the royal cuisine, that of the smaller cities and that of the home, create different levels. And without understanding that, context is off. So I went to the Blue Elephant in London, and Thai cuisine to me was completely off the hook. I can't even tell you what the bill was.
Is it the same Blue Elephant from Bangkok, the cooking school and the restaurants? I think so.
Yeah. The place is like 12,000 square feet. It's just it's a paradise of cuisine, and just the level of service and so forth. That was actually the first time I had ever tried Thai. We're talking about 1993. So all of a sudden I come and I'm sitting at this little wobbly table with this, food in front of me that looked nothing like what I had gotten in London in this experiment or experience. And my context kind of went, okay, wait a minute, what am I seeing here? And clearly I made the connections knowing how I was raised on Hungarian and Chilean cuisine. And I started seeing exactly what you're talking about, Robert.
Reminds me of, there's a chef you may know of, David Thompson. It's like one of just knows more about Thai food, especially 18th century royal Thai food. And he was the first person to have a Michelin star Thai restaurant in the world. There was 2 of them, and it was in London, the Halkin Hotel. Then he opened up Nam, which means water, in Bangkok. And he said in an interview, "Well, I came to help preserve the culture." Ooh, the Thais didn't like that. But it's true. He came to help do that. He just opened in Singapore. But I remember working in London at his restaurant and seeing them actually make coconut milk fresh. And then he's like, every station has a mortar. It pounds a lot of things to order. And then I go in the fridge, and I'm like, what's this? You don't make your curry paste? He goes, oh, no, I have them sent from Thailand. It's like, what? He goes, it's better than I can make here. Like, okay. It was just simple as that. Or I'm in Bangkok working with him on a street food book, and everything is by hand. It was challenging. David's challenging. And then what he did, he pulled out a food processor to make his shrimp cakes. And it was my chance. I'm like, chef, oh really? Really? He goes, Robert, it makes it better. That to me is an important lesson. That really, for this person that's a purist, speaks Thai, reads Thai, the whole thing. But what he did was he said, hey, listen, it doesn't matter the process to get there, the technique, as long as the end result tastes like that person makes. And that's why I love using things like a Thermomix or the new Pacojet I'm going to buy, or that has these capabilities to make paste that replicate something I could do in a mortar and pestle. It's different, but I can get to the end result more efficiently, more effectively.
The Pacojet or the Kenwood?
The new
special items. Very new. From the Italian perspective, right? Staying true to what the cuisine is, staying true to the seasons, because Italian food, again, is very, very peasant.
and it's seasonal.
Very seasonal. Yeah.
And you have to be able to deliver regardless of the application. And I shouldn't say regardless. Actually, let me take a step back. You can change a little bit of the applications throughout the process, and sometimes deliver, as David would show, a better.
Yes. It can be better than that, and that's because, sometimes it's like, well, that's how they've done it. It's like, well, maybe they didn't know. Food changes, right? Or maybe they were trying to cook, maybe they boiled out of the meat in their curry because they wanted to be safe while it sits out at room temperature for the rest of the day. But you don't need to do that now because we have this thing called a refrigerator, or we cook it by batch. And I'm being facetious, but it's true. Things can be better than traditional, as odd as that may sound.
Let's round the corner with our last one, so we can leave a few moments for everybody to talk to us.
Yes.
If you had greater exposure to authentic ethnic food, it is due to, interesting here, your lineage, your experiences living outside the U.S., or your travels. Travel is critical. It bridges one's gap mentally. It brings you to the place of origin. Some of the best Italian food I had was actually in Poland. It makes sense. It's like right up the road, right? I was so close, and it was phenomenal. I just haven't had the pleasure of being in Italy, but it's right over there. It's a drive away, so why wouldn't it be fantastic? But I think that this is really important to look at. Okay, so that kind of cut it off. Let me see if I can help. I only have had the privilege of trying some ethnic foods because of co-workers or friends, so that's probably the lunchroom pass-around, right?
Right.
I have friends from all over the world, just experimental with food. We live in a very multicultural country. Did you get on my survey, Robert? This sounds like you. And we are surrounded by many different cuisines. Neighborhoods have their own flavors. So as long as it's good food made authentically, it's wonderful. What a great notion for us to kind of get to the close with here. Any thoughts on this, gentlemen?
Well, I think if you look at the popularity of cuisines, a lot of people often ask me, why isn't Malaysian food more popular? Or why isn't Burmese? And why is Thai, as Southeast Asia, most popular, Vietnamese? And it's certainly because of density of population and government spending millions of dollars promoting their cuisine, because they know it's a success to tourism. Thailand has spent literally millions every year for the last 30 years.
Really good point.
They know it. And so they help promote it. But what's interesting is when those ethnicities that have larger populations here, they settle, they do what they do, which is open a restaurant because they have to feed each other and they want that food. And then, and I'm a product of this, you meet somebody from that culture and you eat there, and so you learn about it, or you marry someone, and then your friend, hey, come check this out. And so it just starts going out. And so a lot of it is when something is more popular, it could be deliberate through a great marketing campaign, or it can be just how many people are here. And I think the last thing is about presentability. Thai food inherently, Vietnamese food inherently is beautiful cuisines, bright colors, lots of things. Indonesia, I'm sorry if I offend anyone, Malaysia, a lot of those, it's just not, a lot of it is not pretty food. Although it could be made beautiful, changing it slightly in presentation, but retaining that genuine, authentic flavor. Because there's fine dining restaurants in those places too.
What else did you just say yesterday about pad thai?
Oh, yeah. I mean, pad thai has only been in Thailand for 92 years or something. And it was deliberately selected by the government as a food, and there's articles out there about this, to be a food that could feed the masses internally, inexpensively, and promote the country nationally. Kway teow is a rice noodle from up in China, but it is Thai. It's 100% real Thai, but it's not made with paprika and ketchup. You know, it's made with ground roasted chilies and tamarind and all that. So pad thai is authentic, but it's not really, is it traditional? I don't know. 100 years isn't long. No. Fascinating. And the Thai government, that was their hero. Everyone needs a hero. History's,
Thoughts, Mark?
The piece I really enjoy about this is the larger percentages of selections here are actually all influenced by experience.
Experiential learning.
Experience is through your lineage and through your travels and touching. Now, granted, when we travel, our options are typically focused within the areas that we're traveled into, so that may give us a little more reason that, you know, would I try something or would I select something different? Well, travel kind of narrows that scope for us a little bit. But
The unique part to me in reading this and understanding is all of our experiences in any capacity on a day-to-day basis or traveling or whatever else through our lineage or understanding that is all about the experience.
A vibrant discussion. I think you all see, we all love what we do. We're passionate about it. We want to see what your thoughts are. And if you've got a few questions, we've got about 5 minutes for that right now. I'd love to hear from you.
The only crickets that I've had has been in Vietnam, Thailand primarily, and they're always fried on the street whole.
Super crunchy.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of. I haven't really experimented with the different knife cuts and different seasonings, etc. But I think what's interesting about it being popular in a place that you wouldn't think it's popular is people want these bragging rights. Oh, I've eaten that. And that's fine if people do it for the sensation because they may get turned on to something. I'm a person that I don't eat something to prove a point. I eat it because it tastes good.
Well, the fantastic part is there's so many return customers. They continually get the burgers.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Where is this place from the Dark Ages?
Youngstown, Ohio.
Youngstown,
Yeah.
Ohio.
So here's something interesting. I was actually in a meeting yesterday and so forth through another company, and the dynamic shift of where cuisines are influenced into our country start either East Coast and West Coast, and they transition down to the southern part, and actually the Midwest ends up being the last part to adopt anything or to embrace anything, except our wonderful city of Chicago, which is the second city in the states typically that's driving factors in it. So Youngstown being a product east of Cleveland, that whole, you drive an hour and you hit Cleveland, that culinary explosion is that close. And it's amazing what's happening up there with the cuisines that people are attacking and these neighborhoods, the Russia Hill or Little Italy or whatever else, and how they're curating, champion, taking that torch and continuing with it. But it's interesting that you said that because you are in that dynamic shift, and that's how things happen in a country. So one of the takeaways potentially for anybody here is wherever you're at or wherever you live or wherever you're visiting from today, you have an opportunity as well, if you really like something, to launch it within your area to help educate, get bragging rights, showcase, be new to the market, and actually drive and create a business yourself.
Awesome. Time for one more question. There's a hand in back. Okay, we got strong opinions, but go ahead, Robert.
Just a perfect example, Sriracha. 15 years ago I went because I found out it was actually a place, the seaport. I went there for a couple days to do research. Every person I asked for 2 days picked up a bottle and says, make it, I buy it.
Where were you?
In Sriracha, in Thailand, southern Thailand, in Sriracha. Did research about Namprik Sriracha, and most people didn't make it. So there's nothing wrong with pre-prepared things if they're made the right way,
But take the time. Were you here for the whole thing? Okay, so as I said at the beginning, do your homework and understand what a proper end game is supposed to taste and smell and look and feel like, and make sure that that's still your end goal. There's some great products out here, you guys. There's fabulous products out here. But if it's missing the fresh cilantro, okay, that's pretty available to mainstream restaurateurs.
Or as is type
Or that could be
limes and so
essential
forth.
to the flavor that you're trying to get into the end game. So
Yeah.
you have to be able to pick and choose. I would challenge, because we are an independent entrepreneur, is how committed do you really want to be? Because you can find the ingredients. Mainstream America, whatever else. Again, I'll go back to the distribution channels in America. I was with Hilton Worldwide for 22 years, did distribution with them in different capacities. It's out there. It's a matter of what is best for you and how do you want to approach it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I need to wrap. With respect to the schedule that the National Restaurant Association has before you, and on behalf of Johnson & Wales University, thank you all very much for your time today.